Hello, my name is Chloe, welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you my October wrap up. So October kind of feels like one of my worst reading months of the year. Statistically, it's not, but I just feel a little bit unfulfilled by my reading in October. I definitely didn't do bad. I've got some 5 stars here, I've got lots of 4s, I read a decent number of books, but in terms of my reading this year, it really took a nosedive. I don't quite know why. That's a lie, I fully know why. I was so busy at work that on most evenings I felt like I didn't even have the brain capacity to think. I was doing the most work during this month than I have done in the past, I'm gonna go 18 months. So the fact I could still read 13 books is pretty impressive. Only 2 of those were audio, and yeah, I just didn't really feel like I was in the mood a lot of the month to read. So anyway, let's get all the negativity done, that's dumped. Let's talk about the books I read. So yeah, I read 13 books, as I said, which was 3 less books than in September. I read a total of 4,800 pages, which was 25% less than in September. That averaged to 155 pages a day, again 28% less, but the average length of the books I was reading was 369, which was only 8% less than the previous month. So overall I was reading a similar length of book, but just 3 less. My ratings went as follows. I had 1 book that I didn't rate, 5 3 stars, 1 3.5 star, 4 4 stars, and 2 5 stars. On average, that is a 3.4 star month. I just had another look back through my stats, and that isn't even the worst rated month in terms of books I read, so I don't really know what it was about October. I think I'm just tired. We need to put October behind us and move on to November. Before we do that, let's run through the books that I did finish. The one I didn't rate was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is a weird, I guess, literary fiction about a woman who works in a convenience store, if the title didn't say that, and she just doesn't really understand why she might want to do more with her life. She's worked in this store for 18 years, she is now 36 years old, and people are asking her when she's settling down, when she's getting married, when she's having kids, and she's just perfectly happy rotating the stock at the convenience store. So that's kind of what this book's about. It's not as weird as Earthlings. So I read Earthlings by this author, and that book is just so weird. It's like a fever dream. This one is less fever dream and more just what's the point? Like, what was I supposed to get out of this? I didn't dislike it, I just don't think I fully understood the point it was making. I guess it was that you don't have to feel ashamed for what you want to stay and do with your life. But yeah, I just don't think I'm intelligent enough to fully grasp this one and enjoy it, but I did read it. Next up, moving into the 3-star books. The first one I have is Family of Liars by E. Lockhart, which I have already unhauled. This one is the prequel to We Were Liars, and it's about the family before the generation of We Were Liars. It definitely wasn't bad by any means, I just don't think it was really that necessary, which is going to be a theme throughout my 3 stars. Where I did kind of enjoy it, I liked learning about the backstory, but We Were Liars I reread in, I think, September, and I dropped it from a 5-star to a 3-star, so I didn't really need to read the prequel because I knew I wasn't going to love it and keep it. It definitely wasn't a bad story by any means, it just did nothing special for me, so 3 stars. The next 3-star read I have is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. I didn't outright hate this book, don't get me wrong, but it had 5-star feels for a little while. I was really enjoying it, and then this book just went somewhere odd. I can't talk about it in too much detail because of spoilers, but I wanted the theme to stick of being in a house, you know something's outside, you know it's watching you, you know it wants to get at you, but is it going to do that? That was the level of creepiness that I wanted. That was the part I was reading and cringing on the inside because I wanted to save our main character. But yeah, it didn't really stick on that theme, so I didn't love where it went. It was, however, a really creepy time. I love how it was written. I love the sarcasm between the characters, so it was a very fun read. It just didn't do everything I wanted to do with the horror. Next up, I have a 3-star read that I will be keeping on my shelves. Actually, I have 2 of those in this stack. But we have I need to flip it. Life and Death, which is Twilight Reimagined by Stephenie Meyer. This is my 10th anniversary collector's edition of Twilight, which came with Life and Death attached. And this is a retelling of Edward and Bella, but we're swapping Edward and Bella for Edith and Beaufort. The genders are swapped, so we have some situations where maybe they're told a little bit differently from when it was Edward and Bella. Unfortunately, I don't think this story was very necessary. I guess I read them in the wrong order because this came out before Midnight Sun. Midnight Sun is a retelling of Twilight, but Edward is the narrator. So we have the same characters, they're in the same roles, but we get a male perspective. This one was a male perspective and the genders were swapped, so their roles in the story were kind of swapped, but their roles were exactly the same. There wasn't really much change apart from the ending, which I did love, by the way. But yeah, overall, it did just feel like I was reading Twilight again. Even though I was being told about different characters, I was seeing them as the Twilight characters, so it was kind of hard to get out of that funk. But this is my 10th anniversary collector's edition, so this is not going anywhere. This will stay up with my Twilight books on my shelf. But yeah, I just wasn't wowed by Life and Death. Next up, we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which sadly I didn't love, but I didn't hate it. This is a werewolf vampire romance, and we're following, I've completely forgotten her name, Misery. How could I forget that? Misery is the daughter of like the vampire leader, councilman, and she ends up in an arranged marriage with Lo, the were leader. What's he called? What are they called? The pack, the alpha, that's the word. So they end up in an arranged marriage, and it's kind of how she starts to integrate in their pack and the were versus vampire politics, with a little bit of steamy romance thrown in at the same time. I don't really have much more to say on it though. It didn't really do anything for me. The smuttiness was pretty good. It is the first example of knotting that I'd read, so that was an experience. Kind of understand that a little bit more now, but it, yeah, just didn't really knock my socks off. So I'm glad I gave it a go, but not my favourite new thing. Another 3-star that is staying in my collection because I can't really believe I've read this is The Ritual by Chantal Tessier. I picked this up right at the end of October because I wasn't really feeling gripped by anything I'd read during the month, and I was like, screw it, I want to read something completely nonsensical and just odd. This describes itself as a dark college romance. I am actively going to try and de-influence you to read this book because it was pretty damn bad. However, I gave it 3 stars because I couldn't put it down. Genuinely, for the 4 days that I was reading this chunker, I was doing so much work. I don't know how I found the time to read, but I did. This book was just something else. We're following Riot, who is sworn into the secret society called the Lords, and he is given Blakely as his chosen. The chosen women, I have to really watch what I say here because YouTube isn't going to like some of the terms that I would use. But the chosen women are basically given to the Lords. They have absolutely no say in what happens next, but there is a specific use for the chosen women. They are given as a reward for the Lord's abstinence over the past 3 years. So when they're like seniors in college and about to kind of graduate into the Lords, they are given these chosen women before they settle down with their wives, who are different women that have been arranged for them. So there's pretty much one use for a chosen. This one use is very forced on them, and it is described in detail in this book, and we are supposed to like it. I don't like it, but I couldn't stop reading it. So yeah, this is, the trigger warnings don't really list that. They list random things that they've included as trigger warnings, some of which I'm like, okay, like, is that a trigger when you're actually describing, I don't know. The R word is the one I can't really say on YouTube without getting flagged. It was a weird one, but I couldn't stop reading it, so 3 stars. And I'm probably going to keep it for when this can feature in its own video. Next up, the book I gave 3.5 stars to was episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. And I am going to hold on to this one. Even though my normal criteria is less than 4 stars immediately gets the boot, this one is going to stay because I did really enjoy what it did at the start. We're following a group of ghost hunters who kind of follow the same path as the reality TV shows I watch with ghost hunters. So I really did enjoy the setup for this story. It then gets very, very weird, like very weird. but I've been told the audiobook is phenomenal, so I'm going to keep this book on my shelves, maybe come back to it in the future. It's told in mixed media. I really enjoyed that part. I did enjoy just where the whole story went. It just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted more of a ghost hunting book, so I can't really penalise this book for not being what I wanted. It's not like I was sold the wrong thing, it's that I presumed the wrong thing, so that's not the book's fault. But overall, this is a very fun time. I don't think I'll reread it anytime soon, but I think I might pick it up like next spooky season, the one after. I just think this might be a fun book to read again, even though I didn't absolutely love it. Next up, a book I gave 4 stars was Say Her Name by Juno Dawson. I won't talk too much about this one because I was reading it for Amy McCall's book club. We will have done the live by the time this video goes up, so I will link that down in the description. Make sure you go check it out to see my full thoughts about this book as well as Amy's. But this is basically a retelling of the Bloody Mary kind of, what you're not going to call it a myth, like the whole saying it into a mirror Bloody Mary story. So yeah, I did have a fun time with it. I thought it was a really good mix of teenage contemporary, like normal dark YA issues, and then full-blown horror. So I did have a good time with it. It's really creeped me out a few times in the night, so I'd say it did its job. Next, I started a reading vlog where I just read rom-coms. So the first one I have to talk about is The Marriage Game by Sarah Desai. I gave this one 4 stars. I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with this book. It just didn't absolutely knock my socks off. It was a very cute romance. We're following Layla and Sam, who end up basically fighting for some office space. The way they're going to fight for the office space is using the marriage game, which is setting Layla up with an arranged marriage. However, obviously, they are forced to work in the same area. They're doing this dating experience together, so emotions start to fly between Sam and Layla. I think this book was a really good look at the like Western take on dating meshed with Layla's family in this, which is a very traditional arranged marriage setup. Again, I thought it was really fun. It was really cute. It just didn't completely knock my socks off, so it won't get 5 stars. And at this point, I don't really see myself rereading it, so I think I'm going to unhaul it, even though I did really enjoy it. I can't fault the book, I just didn't feel a special type of way. Which is the same story for the next book, which is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, another rom-com I read in that week, another one I gave 4 stars, but I don't really see myself rereading it. So this one is a YA romance, which I didn't know going in and I think did impact my rating. We're following Pepper and Jack, whose families own rival restaurants, and they have a current feud going on Twitter about a potential stolen recipe. Pepper and Jack are kind of getting to know each other better at school. Pepper's a bit more of a recluse. She wants to do really well at school. She kind of avoids social situations and friends because of this, but Jack starts to break through her exterior. They start hanging out a little bit, but then they find out that they are the ones responsible for these rival Twitter accounts that are currently warring on the internet. It's a very Romeo and Juliet situation, but involving Twitter and grilled cheese, so it's fun. There's definitely nothing wrong with this book. It just didn't completely knock my socks off. Kind of similar theme throughout October. I like some of these books, but I just don't feel special about them. Is that me? Is that the books? We will never know. But yeah, enjoyed it, just didn't absolutely love it. And finally, in the 4-star category, we have Sleeping with a Psychopath by Carolyn Woods. Normally, I don't rate true crime, memoir style non-fiction, but this one I'm gonna rate. I gave it 4 stars. This was a very, very interesting tale of Carolyn, who was dating and moved in with and was giving money to a complete psychopath. It's very similar to the book The Bigamist by Mary Turner Thompson. The fact that these true crime stories are just so similar is baffling, that this happens to people. And this story is not set that far in the past, and it's quite stressful to think that there are situations like this in the ones I've read where women are fooled by these men who are told that they are MI5 agents and they're flying planes across the world, and all they need is £250,000 to quickly buy something because they can't do it themselves, but they'll pay you back, don't worry. The fact that this story is so prevalent, like I've read it in so many situations, I've watched many Netflix shows about it, about different stories, it just baffles me that this situation still happens and that people fall for it in the nicest way. I'd like to think I have my wits about me, but Do I? There's a lot of well, not a lot of comparisons, but there's comparisons you can draw. I'm in a long distance relationship where 90% of my relationship happens over the phone. So these situations that women think they're in, where they like have married or are going to marry these people and they actually have no idea who they really are, is absolutely terrifying. Luckily, I know, and I'm saying that with 99.9% confidence, that I am not being taken for a fool in my relationship. But it's kind of easy to see how particularly older women get involved with technology and get a bit, you know, the wool pulled over their eyes and they think everything's fine. Either way, I can't give this 5 stars because it was quite repetitive at times, but I think it was an absolutely fascinating story and I would encourage you to give it a listen. Next up, we have my 2 5-star reads of the month. Some of you may have noticed what is missing, but we will get to that. The first one I have here is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. As I was reading this, I kind of thought it was a 3.5 4-star because there just wasn't anything wrong with it, but I wasn't thoroughly like engaged. By the time I got to the end, I was crying my little heart out, as I always do to Colleen Hoover's, and I couldn't give it anything less than a 5-star. This is the first book I read this month, but it's actually one of the ones I remember the most about with all my reading. So we're following Kenna, who comes back to town after she's got out of prison, and she's been in prison because she was sentenced for, I think it was accidental manslaughter of her boyfriend at the time. He died in a tragic accident, and when Kenna went to prison, she actually was pregnant with his baby. So she's had the baby in prison and it went to live with her boyfriend's parents. She gets out of prison, she doesn't really have a plan, but she wants to be back in her daughter's life. And then the man who comes along is Ledger. He is the best friend of her ex-boyfriend from way back when, and he is actually the man who has stepped into kind of a father role for her daughter, or at least like a cool uncle role for her daughter while she's been gone. And when he finds out that she's the girlfriend of his dead best friend, he absolutely loses it and doesn't want her to have anything to do with her daughter's life, as do... Excuse me? And the parents also don't want Kenna to have anything to do with her daughter's life. This book went exactly where I thought it would go. Genuinely, there were no surprises, no shocks, but I had a fantastic time with it and it was just something that really made me want to be reading this month, so I had to give it 5 stars. Last but not least, one of my favourite books of all time, showing up again on Reread to be a 5-star, did not disappoint me at all. We have A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. This is the second book in the ACOTAR series and I went back in this time fully annotated and just absolutely had a ball. There was so much of this that I couldn't remember, so when I got to the end I was basically screaming out loud like, no, don't do that, you idiot, and I was completely losing my mind, forgetting where the story was going to go from the end of this and into A Court of Wings and Ruin. I'll be talking about this one in more detail in my live show coming up in a couple of days after this video goes live, I think, or it's around about the same time. Keep an eye on my YouTube. I will link it in the description, whether it's the completed live or the upcoming live. But yeah, I had a fantastic time with this, thoroughly enjoyed it, loved my reread and can't wait to carry on with the series. So there we have it, that is my wrap up for October. As I said, not the best month ever, but I did still read a lot and I did have some good reads in there. I just didn't absolutely love my time, so hopefully I have a better time in November. A little comparison I quickly want to do because I mentioned it in my, what would it have been, September wrap up, and it was quite productive. This one is a little less productive because of some of the reasons why I'm keeping the books. But out of the 13 books I read, 6 of them are going back on my shelves. I'm okay with that. 6 out of 13, it's less than half. Well, it's basically exactly half because you can't have half a book, but 6 are going back on my shelves. Some of them were audiobooks, so they were, you know, never going back on my shelves and never were, but I am unhauling 5 books out of the 13. That feels pretty productive to have read 13 books and be saying bye to some of them. My camera now cut me off because I've been talking for so long, but thank you guys so much for watching my wrap up. If there are any books here that you have opinions on, please tell me about them down in the comments. I would love to talk to you about what I read in the month. On that note though, it is time for me to finish talking. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.